Erik Peterson. I'm a senior researcher at the Western University or the University of Western Norway for Applied Sciences or something like that. It's a very complicated title. 40 years in the marine industry. I'm a naval architect originally. I hold a PhD in usability engineering. I was working as a ship designer. I've been head of research in the Danish Maritime Institute, and for the last 20 years, I was doing automation navigation development with what is now called Vertila SAM Electronics, and for the last 10 years, it was focused on navigation. And then when I left 3 years ago, and is now working full time for the university. So thank you very much, David. Do go on.
Okay. Can you see that slide?
I can see that slide. So yeah, go on. You just saw the video, and what else we're going to do here is that I will give you sort of a status on where the project is, but I will also have a look into the future. And this is very much intended to keep you in the loop, and also to get feedback from you. We are a user-centered project. We're doing user-centered design. We are having the users in the middle of everything, and this is one of the ways we keep sort of our feet on the ground by having this kind of events. So next slide, please. When we wrote the proposal for the ocean project, we realized that it wouldn't work. We couldn't describe what we were going to do without having some kind of ingoing hypothesis. And this was also driven in a way by the way the proposal or the call for tenders was formulated by the EC. So we, in a way, we agree that accidents and incidents very often have some kind of a human error as maybe the trigger. But we are also very firmly believing that there is a long chain of underlying reasons that are all influencing that this can actually happen. And we started from that, and this is kind of a fundamental viewpoint we have, that it is not just humans making mistakes on the bridges. They are, in a way, by circumstances, many accidents are accidents just waiting to happen, and it's just a question of tipping. So we see that, or we have the hypothesis that there was a number of potential root causes, so about culture, about organizational pressures, about lack of training, lack of the right information at the right time, etc., etc. And we started in one part of the project to look into that. Next slide, please. This work is now available. All of these reports are available on the Ocean website, and they're available for download. And like I'm going to say on a number of times, we would really like you to dive into these reports, obviously depending on your vantage point and your interests, and give us some feedback. But for those of you who are interested in root causes, we think that it shows, the work done shows that the ingoing hypothesis was right, and there's further validation to be had, and also it's becoming more fine-grained. So working conditions, fatigue, balancing agendas, balancing pressures are also contributors. Technology is a contributor. It's both a help but also a hindrance, and there is maybe a growing concern that Complex systems look very dependable, but they are in a way hiding their weaknesses, or it's very complicated to see if something goes wrong and what is going wrong. And then alerts remains being a gigantic challenge in this industry, where every bit of kit have their own alert scheme, and even with BAM and CAM, it is really a mess. And we see that on many ships, when they're working close quarters, they actually have to set aside a crew member to manage alerts. So this is all available in what we call D1.1, that is deliverable 1.1, and it's available for download. So next slide, please. And another dimension of this is obviously the question: how safe are you, or are you error prone? And for this reason, we have been developing a number of KPIs. And next slide, please. And it's all documented in another report that is called Deliverable 1.3. And here you can see the 8 main KPIs that we have chosen to develop, or that are the most meaningful when it comes to navigational safety. And the interesting thing about these, I'm not going to read them out, but the interesting thing is that they combine qualitative and quantitative measures or dimensions. So it is not the typical all quantitative assessment. There's also a qualitative assessment. And in the next part of the project, we are going to I wouldn't say play with that, but we are going to give it a test, a trial, and see to what level this is really operational, and to what level it can help people probably to ask themselves the question: how safe are we, or do we have an issue? Are there things that we need to look at in order to improve our safety record? So this is the purpose of the KPIs, and this is where the status of that part of the development. Next slide, please. Then we have another activity that is also kind of a soft activity, but it is very much about decision making and making the right decisions. And it is so that a traditional theory around decision making is what we call the normative decision making. It is sort of a very idealistic or ideal way of making decisions, assuming that people have all the time in the world and they will make logical, rational decisions. And then there's another school of thought that is called naturalistic decision making, and it opposes this idea of rational, logical decisions. And the idea here is that this is probably much closer to what is really happening in life. And if you take the next slide, David, then these are the situations where we believe that naturalistic decision making applies. And if you compare this list of things with what is really happening in a bridge, this is much more like it. I mean, you do have ill-structured problems, or wicked problems is another way of saying it. You have changing information all the time. You have probably conflicting goals. You have time constraints. You do have high stakes. I mean, if you are responsible for the safe navigation of a large ship, and so this is where under these conditions you can't make this logical, well thought through, well argued decision. And if you take the next slide, the reason here it's interesting is that it means that you have to design onboard systems in a different way, because you are feeding a decision-making process that is vastly different from this logical decision-making. So it does have a large impact on how you should design things and what you should think about when you design things. So it's very much about situation awareness. It's very much about pattern matching. It's about helping people to see something they have seen before, or to see through the situation, to see, oh, this reminds me of so and so, and we fixed it so and so last time. So this is how people are really making that kind of decisions. So they're leaning back on experience, they're leaning back on patterns, and that means that information should be presented to people in that fashion rather than the more strict, logical, well-ordered world. So this is something we are taking forward to design. This is something we are taking forward to training. It is useful to train people to think about this and to make decisions in that light, being explicit about, okay, so this is how I make decisions. And then finally, we think that it might be of interest to STCW as part of the overall curriculum and training regime. So again, the deliverable 2.3 is available. It's available for download. You can have a look, and we would love to get feedback on that one. Next slide, please. And another dimension of design, and like I said in the beginning, we are very much human-centered or user-centered. So, and we know from earlier research that there is really a good volume of highly competent literature about human factors and ergonomics in maritime design. We also know from experience, unfortunately, that normally the usability of bridge equipment is not very good. There's a number of reasons for that. And we also see that there's a low uptake in general on methods that could improve on that. And the first deliverable that is also on the website, by the way, has supported that. And if you take the next slide, then we decided to go bottom up instead of top down. D3.1 is rather top down. Now we went and talked to people who are involved in design of maritime equipment, and this is unfortunately a sensitive document, so it's not available for download. But I would very much like, if any of you would like to discuss this, we can discuss it. It's to protect our sources that it is sensitive, because too many people could potentially be identified. But if you want to discuss this, I would be very happy to, if you're interested in where is the industry in terms of maturity when it comes to design for people. And I think that the topmost quote there is probably very correct. We are happily past the stage where it's being discussed at all, whether you should design for people. So there's a growing understanding that it is needed, and there's just correspondingly a lack of know-how or lack of knowledge. Then what to do? I mean, if I really want to do it, how to do it? So it's a lot about connecting industry to the knowledge base. It's a lot about potentially to redescribe some of the methods that are already available out there, and that is documented in this deliverable. I'm more than happy to talk about it, and we are continuing this work with the ocean partners to see what would it take to transform the methods into something that actually fits into the way practice is undertaken. Next slide. Another side of usability is robustness, or this is at least how I see it. And 25 years ago, in another project, an international standard was the result, which is called ISO 17894, about dependable systems and how to develop dependable systems. It's goal-based, it has been through the systematic reviews of the ISO 4 times without any changes. But we thought that so many things are happening in the world. Software is developed in different ways, so there are different agendas, there are different paradigms. So we wanted to see if ISO 17894 is still valid, or whether it needs a kind of a revision or modernization. So this is also work that is ongoing. And next slide, please. And the next the first step is now documented in a deliverable called 3.5, but that is actually a training course. And if you are interested in the development of dependable systems, or if you are a consumer of systems, you want to be dependable, I really urge you to get a hold of this deliverable, and especially look at the training course. It is asking very many questions that a buyer or a seller of maritime systems could and should ask themselves. So I think there's very good room for thought in this. Next slide. So now we are switching in a way from the conceptual things, the framework things, to the much more tangible things. And you saw in the video that Ocean is a lot about collecting data, collecting sightings, collecting observations, sending them to somewhere, fusing them, and sending them back to the mariners. And this somewhere is the box in the middle called the European Navigational Hazard Infrastructure. And you can see here a kind of a stylistic view of things. So we have mechanisms out there to do data collection. They are sent back, they are fused, they are timestamped, they are managed, and then they are retransmitted back to the seafarers. So it's a kind of crowdsourcing exercise that if you see something, then it's shared with everybody with a minimum of overhead. And that's the whole idea, that what people are seeing, it gets value because it's being shared. Next slide, please. So the overall infrastructure is a number of interfaces. It's about storage, it's about management, and it's about publishing. And I'm sorry if this is technical. Next slide. But we now know, and this is sort of a backbone in the development in the Ocean project. Without the infrastructure, we would basically not be operational. And now we have the backbone defined, and development is obviously continuing, and it will be fine-tuned, and we will learn things as we go along. But the interesting thing is that we do have the first connections. So the app we are developing that you saw also in the video is actually connecting to the infrastructure, so we can send data. And the hydrophone system that we are developing, I'll get back to that a little bit, is also connecting to the infrastructure. So the first bit of the challenge of collecting data and making them available for sharing is done. It's implemented, and we are obviously continuing that. And if, in case you're interested in interfacing, in data standards, in how we're sharing data and the challenges we're facing, then deliverable 6.1 is available also for download. Next, please. And now, where is it going to end? And that was also sort of explained or hinted in the video, that what we call the 4D SAD, it's a terrible name. It means a four-dimensional situation awareness display, meant for the professional fleet, meant for SOLAS, is part of the design. So all the things I talked about naturalistic decision making and design for situation awareness, etc., is feeding into this. So the methods for designing for people is feeding into this, and there's a great spillover to the reporting app. This is why I have two blue arrows here. So So this is what we do, and they have double functions, both of them. So they are both active on the data collection side, but they're also active on the data display side. So this is where the data from observations would arrive at the 4D SAD, at the reporting app, and hopefully also on existing systems like ECDIS and ECSs out there. This is at least what we are working on and looking very concentrated into. So next slide. And then this is a kind of a gentle reminder to everybody that at least my personal view is that the term situation awareness is a little bit misused in marine. It's sort of taken as the equivalent of looking out of the window, and that is not how we think about it. So when we speak about situation awareness, we speak about 3 steps. So perception, I mean seeing things, comprehension, making sense of things, and then projection, which is the important bit. So how is this situation gonna end? And that feeds into decision making. And if you take the next slide, David, please. Then you can see how we are addressing this in our work. So in the deliverable that is called 7.1, which is also available for download, we are looking at how to display information that is pertinent to perception, to comprehension and projection. And this is also where our understanding of naturalistic decision making feeds in. And interestingly enough, from the first report I spoke about, what we didn't realize, but what we certainly do realize now, is that almost 60% of accidents are not seen coming. So operators are missing the cues for various reasons. And it can be, like I said before, it can be fatigue. It can be that they're occupied with other work. There are very many reasons. But if a design does not take account of that, then it will be ineffective, because this is really the greatest barrier of all, to be sure that people understand there is a danger present. And there's a rhetorical question here also that I think is interesting. How can it be that we keep getting it wrong? How can it be that the ships equipped to fulfill all rules and regulations are actually exhibiting this kind of shortcoming? So that's a rhetorical question. I hope we can answer it, however, going forward. So next slide, please. And in case you are interested in questions like this, in case you're interested in constraints and support and aspects of design, I think that this deliverable 7.1 is very, very interesting. It maps design patterns to design principles. It contains a goal analysis. It gives you quite a bit of context of use. This is one of the typical shortcomings, that designers are sitting in their offices and they're not seafarers, and they don't necessarily appreciate what a seafarer is going through and thinking and experiencing. So there's stuff on that. And then finally, I mean, there's a set of design principles that we will try to apply to the upcoming design of the 4D SAD, the 4D situation awareness display. Next slide, please. And finally, the last deliverable I'm going to beat the drum for is what we call an escalation architecture. This is primarily a reflection on our attempt to lower the barrier for introduction of new technology. So we think that there are many interfaces on ships. We think there's a lot of thoughts being thought already, being implemented, that if applied correctly, can reduce the burden of adding additional equipment. If you take the next slide. So we have, and that was also hinted in the video, eventually we have a combine of the 4D SAD with a decision-making engine or a decision support engine that can help the navigators make choices about evasive maneuvering. And they need to be integrated with existing ships infrastructures, and at the lowest possible cost to reduce the entry level for adding this kind of functionality to, especially to the existing systems. So the idea was that it can utilize the bridge navigation watch alarm systems that are already available for providing alerts. And if you take the next slide, the choice was that if it behaves like a track control system or heading control system, then it will be sort of be familiar to the operators. And at least we now know through the demonstration that the choice of going down that route is correct. But what is also interesting, and I took this on for maybe to get you to have a look at D8.3, any design decision triggers requirements. So in this case, the underlying decision support engine certainly got a load of requirements coming from this kind of decision. So if it is to integrate to the BNS, to the BAM, then it has to do a number of things. And we are concerned with the issue of making decisions in time. So, and there's so much inertia in big ships that you have to start in good time. And this is what is called here the latest time to start maneuver. This is what the ship can do. And unless you make a decision prior to the latest time to start maneuver, then basically you can't avoid the incident or the accident. So this is a lot of thinking being done around that, and these are requirements that we will have to answer to in the upcoming design. So 8.3 is interesting. Thank you, David. Let me speak a little bit about what is going on. This is what has happened, and this is what is available. And if you take the next slide, David, let me talk a little bit about what is also ongoing. In the period between months 12 and months 18, we are now in month 15, so all of this work is ongoing, is that we will look into a lot about communications. The success of this depends on connectivity. So we need to look at this both present and future. We will look at the training standards and based on the learning we have so far. We will continue the design of the evasive maneuvering agent that I was just talking about. We are playing around in a sandbox with what we call a knowledge repository, which is another way of presenting information to people. It's like the issue of corporate memory that has been raised over and over again, at least for the last, I don't know, 30 years. How do you ensure that experience and knowledge is kept in a company? And this is an attempt in that direction as well. How do we ensure that the ocean knowledge is made available to people in a way they can appreciate and can absorb? And we are playing around there. And the reason I say this is a low technology readiness level, we cannot crack this, but we do have ideas, and we are trialing them as we speak, and see if this is a better way of serving information. I think that the poorest way of serving information is what we are already doing now, writing deliverables, writing reports, and putting them on the website. It's better than just putting them on a dusty shelf, but how many people are going to read them is the big question. And can we help? Can we facilitate the uptake of knowledge? We're looking into container drift patterns, which is something that is essential to try to predict, okay, so we saw something, where it's going to end up, to what level of accuracy can we provide that kind of information? When is the information not valid anymore? When do we need to take down warnings? Big questions. The infrastructure is continuing development on the database side, and finally we are going to validate that the design patterns, that the visuals that we think we know people need are really the right ones. So this is what is happening in between now and the 1st of April. And I think, David, we can promise that we will also have a webinar once that period is over, and keep all of you up to date on what is happening. So next slide, please. And then I thought we should not forget what is also happening. I mean, there are longer term activities in the project. We are looking at what is called habitat niche models, which is trying to predict where there might be marine mammals based on what we think they prefer in terms of feeding, in terms of temperature, in terms of what a particular species is attracted to. And by modeling the ocean from that perspective, there is a good opportunity to predict where the animals will be. I was also speaking about underwater acoustics. This is another thing that we are doing and which is ongoing. So listening for marine mammals, identifying the species, identifying the number of animals, hopefully identifying where they might be traveling, is very interesting, especially in areas of high density. And then we are looking into completely different subjects, evasive maneuvers of ships, and how they can be suggested and how they are dynamic. And finally, we are looking into satellite-based detection. As one of the ocean partners said to me the other day, the results there are through the roof. They are really, really very, very promising and appear to be very, very solid. And I'm having personally great hopes that we will be able to sweep in front of ships in the shipping lanes and detect marine mammals where we have a high concentration of ships, and be able to warn based on observations from satellites. Yeah. Next slide, or last slide, I actually believe it is. Finally, Ocean is a demonstration project, and we are very heavy on demonstration. And I took this incomprehensible slide along simply to warn you that from month 24, and I mean, we are now in month 15, so from next autumn, from the autumn 2024, we are very much going into demonstration mode. And this is sort of a hook for all of you to become involved in case you would like that. And I do have a slide that is, if you take the next one, David. Yeah, next one. That is sort of the conclusion of this. So what we would very much like you to do, if you have the time and energy, is to download and read those of the deliverables that have a particular interest to you. We would very much like feedback, candid or otherwise, preferably candid. Is it good what we're doing? Is it bad? How could it be improved? Anything and everything you have to suggest to make us perform better. Of the things that you now know are ongoing, is there anything you would like to get engaged with? And finally, especially maybe for the demonstrations, would you like to be involved somehow? Would you like to consult with us? Would you like to direct us? Would you like to provide input or people for testing? It's a lot about people. Would you like to see what we do closer and give us your feedback and be involved in evaluation? So this is what I had to say today, and the message is still talk to us.